So we're going to talk about comping properties, right? We get asked a lot. How do you know value? How do you figure this stuff out? It's definitely something you learn by doing it over time. So I made a couple of videos of like comping properties where you can see my screen. But a couple of things. I realized it's only my MLS, which is the one in Long Island and Queens, and you may be using a different MLS, so it may not be as effective for you. And also, um, I go pretty fast. That's not great. I mean, the videos are just okay, but I wanted to talk about some of the rules about comping. So, the first thing that's crucial in downstate New York, right, which is our area close to the city, is that square footage is not a required field. So, in most of the country, people figure out price per square foot, and that's how they comp. But here, probably 80 to 90% of the listings don't have the square footage on, so it's very hard for you to comp it. Now the truth is, it's not that hard to get approximate square footage, which is really what they should require. And our MLS is about to merge with Hudson Valley, and maybe it will be required in the future. It's probably a good thing. It's at the time when you're listing something, it's a little bit of a pain in the ass if you don't know the square footage. But there are a lot of ways to find out, and you can guess. And there's a disclaimer in there that it's not 100% accurate, but if everybody put square footage in, it would be easier. On occasion, I'll get a call from someone asking me about a listing that we have, or a wholesale deal that we put out there, and they'll say, "What's a square footage?" And very often I'll say, "I don't know." And sometimes they'll say something like, "Well, how do I comp it?" So that tells me a few things. They're probably a beginner. They're certainly a beginner in our area. They might have done a million deals in other areas. In other areas, really, a per square foot number. You take similar properties, you take a per square foot number, and you multiply it by the subject square footage, and you get it. So but in our area, it doesn't work that way. So how do you look for comps and what do you do? So a couple of things. I try to look for the same style house. So we do, there's probably 5 or 6 styles that we do here. So we do a colonial where all the bedrooms are upstairs, a cape where there's 2 bedrooms downstairs and 2 bedrooms upstairs, sometimes one, sometimes two. There's a split where there's like a split level where there's 4 like different levels. You go down, you go up. There's a ranch where everything's on one level. There's a high ranch where there's a downstairs and an upstairs right when you walk in. That covers probably 95% of the properties in our area. So I'll look for a similar style home in an so geographically first. I will do a map search. So I'm going to look in the specific area where the subject property is. I'm going to try to not cross busy streets. I'm going to try to stay with the same school district. And there are areas where that's very tricky. I'm gonna give you an example. Like Massapequa has 4 school districts. They have Massapequa schools, Farmingdale schools, Plainedge schools, and Amityville schools. So you want to try and stay in the same school district, even though sometimes school districts are a very funny thing. There are areas where there's a huge difference in school districts, right? Lynbrook has School District 20, which is pretty good, and Malvern schools, which is considered not as good. But occasionally you'll find somebody whose kids started in Malvern schools, they want to move to Lynbrook, and they want to keep them in the schools. So it's a little bit of a complicated thing, but to get value, I would always stay in the same school district just to be sure. Um, so I would check in MLS for in an area. I try to not go out more than in our area. I try not to go out more than a third of a mile, quarter of a mile. If I have to go half a mile, I'll go half a mile. Same style. So if I'm comping out a cape, I'll look for capes. Same bedrooms and bathrooms. So sometimes that makes a big difference, sometimes it doesn't. For example, most houses here have at least 2 bathrooms or 1.5 bathrooms. If you have a house that's 1 bathroom, I would only comp properties with 1 bathroom to get an idea of what it can go for. Um, but if you have 2 and then it's 2.5, it might not make that much of a difference. But I'm going to try and stay same bedrooms, bathrooms, same style, in the same area, without crossing busy streets, in the same school district, and I'm going to look for what they paid. Most recent comps are more valuable. So our MLS, which is again horrible, maybe the worst MLS I've ever seen, and I've seen MLSs from all over the country. When you compare it to Chicago, Florida, almost all of them in California, it is horrible. And the main reason why it's horrible is because it doesn't let you do a simple comp search. So what I would love to do is I'd love to put a subject property in there, say I want everything within a quarter of a mile, and I want only properties that closed or were listed in the last 6 months, for example. Our MLS cannot do that. If you're doing geographic, then you cannot do these kinds of limited searches. So I'll draw a map, and then I will start, and then I have to do a sort by date, so I get the most recent, and then I'll start searching for style, and look for bedrooms and bathrooms and prices and see what they are. And then I'll look through them and see what the conditions are. So when we do comp searches, right, if we're looking to buy a property, we're going to look for three things. We're going to look for what fully renovated houses went for, right? That gives us an ARV. So it tells us what we can really pay for it if we wanted to rehab it and what another investor would pay for it if they want to rehab it. I'll look for what cruddy houses, old cruddy houses are going for. So if I'm buying a real cruddy house and I may be able to just make it livable, what will that go for? It's in case I want to wholesale it, I want to buy it, do minimal work to it, and sell it retail. And then I'll also look at what investors are paying for. So I'll look at REOs, which are real estate owned properties that a bank bought. What happens is that properties go into foreclosure auctions. Very often, a third party does not buy that property, but it'll go back to the lender or back to the plaintiff, as they say at the auctions. Then it becomes an REO, a real estate owned, where a bank is going to sell it. Most of those have to go to investors, and I'll also look for short sales, also most of which will go to investors. So I'll look for REOs and short sales, and then I'll look at those properties that are fully renovated, and I'll go back in the history and see the public data, and I will see what they paid for it. So that'll give me what investors are paying now for recent REOs and short sales. And also, if I look at fully renovated properties, I'm not in the middle. For fully renovated properties, I'm going to look at what they paid before. Now that tells me what they paid 6 months, a year ago, so it's not as good. But if I get an idea that every investor is paying, in the mid twos for properties here and selling them in the low fours, that gives me a good idea. So in a situation where it's a knockdown or it's just land, I'll look for new construction and I'll see what the builder paid for the land. So those are the situation that's the basics of comping, right? You can't really use per square footage here, like I said, because 80 to 90% of the listings don't have the approximate square footage in it. Right? Usually things that are very big, they'll put the square footage in to show, hey, this is a 4,000 square foot house. But most properties, the 1,000 to 2,000 square foot properties do not have the square footage in it, and you can't comp it out with a per square foot basis. So that's what you're looking for. This is not, well, I'm not gonna say it's not a science. There's a science to it, but it's also more of an art of feeling it, right? Because you have to compare condition, right? So sometimes we'll see comps, and the comps have a master bathroom that looks great, but the other bathroom there's no picture of, right? A little hint is if they're not showing you pictures of all the bathrooms, it's because the bathrooms are pretty old and cruddy. But what we found is that very often, if the master bathroom is well redone, maybe the kids' bathroom, and then there'll be another bathroom in the basement or in the kitchen, it's not done, that may not affect the sale price. So you have to look at these comps, look at condition, and get a feel. But what's crucial is that you don't screw things up by missing something obvious. So let me give you an example. There's an area by us called West Hempstead. West Hempstead has a large Orthodox Jewish population. The areas where the Orthodox Jews will move to near the synagogues, right? Because Orthodox Jews like myself will we don't drive on Saturday, so we need to be able to walk to the synagogue. So within a mile and a half of the synagogues, that area is going to go for more than the area on the other side of the train tracks. So there's a railroad going through, the Long Island Railroad goes through there. So you have to look and not comp properties from one side of the tracks to the other. So it's important to not cross busy streets, not cross large parks or railroad tracks, and making sure that you comp properties from one side with themselves and properties on the other side with themselves. So that's an easy way to screw up. Also, school district's a big way to screw up. I know. The example I gave before in Lynbrook, we've had people say, "Hey, this property is a great deal," and then I'll look at it and I'll say, "You're in the wrong school district." They don't even know what I'm talking about. So that's somebody who just doesn't understand. They say Lynbrook's great. The investor didn't comp it out right. They didn't notice the difference between school district 20 and school district 12, and there is. Not that there's anything wrong with school district 12. Some people will want to be in school district 12 and not want to be in school district 20. But the average buyer out there, there could be a premium of $50,000 to $100,000 for a school district sometimes because people want to be in a better school district, right? It's complicated, right? I just looked at one in Roslyn with this couple of school districts. They're both top 10 school districts in the state, but one's better than the other. Great Neck also. There's a lot of areas where they're really good school districts. It's hard to figure out, but I will only look at that school district just to be sure. Even though some people tell me the other school district is better or worse, I don't know. So I try and keep in the same school district if it gets complicated. So those are the basics of comping out. We're going to show a couple of videos going forward on me actually comping out some properties so you can get a better idea if you're using our multiple listing service. But um, if you're in a different area, your MLS is probably better than ours. But these are just the basics so you understand the concepts.